Ecosystem that there are other areas where the job that allowed me to stay in LA as opposed to what I want.
Worked through a number of different departments. I started in media sales.
Well, I think that as we've seen, many companies are.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Class E podcast. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill, the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Faculty Fellow here at Furman University. Thank you for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you through the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department at Furman University. We are beginning a special summer series called Pathfinders in Purple. It's a series in which we talk with Furman professors and staff who are entrepreneurs and innovators in their own right. Today we have Dr. Cynthia King, who is not only a professor here in the Communication Studies Department, but she also recently started her own consulting firm, Encourage Communication. Dr. King, welcome, or Cynthia, I should say.
Indeed. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted full disclosure here. Dr. King, or Cynthia, hired me here at Furman University in the current position that I'm in, and basically enabled the Class E podcast to happen, quite honestly.
It was the best decision I made, man.
Well, thank you so much.
Several times. Good decisions.
The other good decision you made, you've been teaching for 20 years, you've been here at Furman for 14 years. So lots of experience, and then now you just started your own company recently, but first you wrote a book first and then started your company in conjunction with that. Tell us about how you got that company started.
Yeah, okay. I started the company, didn't do a lot with it, wrote the book and in that sequence. But there were a few catalysts for my starting the company, so I need to go back, I guess about 8 or 10 years when my youngest daughter, I can just see her now coming into the kitchen and saying, "You know what, Mom? You engage in a lot of useless regrets." And wow. I was stunned.
You're like, thanks, child.
I was stunned and flummoxed and offended and almost shamed because she said it so matter-of-factly and she wasn't being disrespectful. It was just this insightful observation that she made about me, and I was stunned. And then not too long after that, my son came up to me and I was, mumbling under my breath, maybe grading. He goes, "Mom, do you like your students? Sometimes you don't act like you like your students." And I couldn't say, "No, I really don't like them." Right. That would have not been the thing to say, but I don't know. I started to reflect, and then it propelled me into this personal odyssey. And this odyssey was sort of guided and steered through personal development literature. And from and I've read a slew of it, a ton of it, and it's really influenced my perspective. But there were 3 things that came from all of the reading that I did, and that the first was that you can change your life by changing the way you think, by changing the patterns, your pattern of thinking, or the internal. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The internal messages. Everyone has a capacity for a kind of a brilliance. Everyone is sort of, it's their birthright. It is just, you have it when you come into this earth. And so it exists in all of us. The other thing is that all humans have 2 questions. It's, do I matter and am I enough?
Oh, yes. And
teachers carry the inherent authority to answer that question persuasively for people. And leaders do too, and that sort of leads me to my second catalyst, and that was becoming chair of the Department of Communication Studies.
Right.
And I just did not expect to. I didn't expect to be asked. The dean called me in. I don't know that there was anybody else really.
Well, and I think it's important to note here that you were the first Black chair of a department here at Furman University. You are a trailblazer in those leadership positions here at Furman, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, and at the time I didn't feel that way. I felt my question was, can I do it? Yeah. Because at the time, the dynamics in the department were quite complicated, and I would be, for all intents and purposes, leading people that outranked me, who had been here longer than me, and at the time I believed were even smarter than me. And so I thought, can I do this? And do I want to do this?
So you, in essence, were asking yourself the two questions that you just talked about.
Absolutely.
Am I smart? Am I good enough?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Am I good enough, and can I do it?
Yeah.
And because I didn't want to, by that time I was well into that odyssey.
Right.
I didn't want to lose any ground. I had found my joy in teaching. I had peace of mind. My confidence was there, or at least it was increased. It had increased. And so, do I really want to? Do I want to jeopardize that? So I decided that I wanted to do that. And so I delved even further into leadership, capacity building, and decided and really became intentional about answering that question for the people that I led. Right. You do matter, and you are enough. Yeah. I like to say that when I led, my favorite words were yes and amen.
Yes, I love that.
You can, yes, I can support you, and yes, you can do it, and it's all going to turn out great. So.
And I'll say, from a professor standpoint, whenever a student, and I've witnessed this, whenever a student comes to you and talks to you about what they want to do in their life, you are such an encourager and such a champion for them, and you help direct them into the right places where they need to be. And a couple of students who come to mind, my expertise is broadcasting, and they were interested in that, and you sent them right to me, and I've since cultivated relationships with those students to help them be and get to where they need to be by the time they graduate.
Absolutely.
And now you're taking that knowledge and passing it not only to students but to businesses.
Oh, I firmly believe in another two things, and that's the two E's: empathy and encouragement.
Yes.
Empathy, understanding, and respecting what other people value and why.
Yeah.
And encouraging is just it speaks to the spirit. It does say you matter. Absolutely. It does say you're enough. It does say that you can do it, and I enjoy doing that. I consider myself a capacity builder. That's what's come out of this.
I like that, capacity builder.
Yeah, another catalyst was workshops. Brad Bechtold was here at the time and asked me to do workshops for the Women's Leadership Institute, and I really like that. As a matter of fact, I had done it, I guess, about over 10 years ago for a program in Washington, D.C., the Hope Fellowship Program, and it was sponsored by USAID. I actually traveled to Kosovo. It was for women leaders, women managers. The U.S. was investing money into Kosovo, which at the time was a war-torn country. Right. And so just working with those women, inspiring them, having them inspire me, because that's the other piece of that. Right. When you give of yourself, you get, and you allow people to inspire you. And so they inspired me. So I'd done it then, but it didn't pick it up when I moved to Furman. Mm-hmm. And so I had the opportunity to do it again. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And so that was another reason why, because it's a consulting business and I do workshops. And then the final catalyst was Anthony Herrera, right, and the center coming here and just infusing a culture of innovation, trying to build a culture of innovation. So all of that talk about entrepreneurship, about social enterprises was infectious for me. Right. It spoke to me, and I thought, well, maybe I can do that. And so I was on Martha's Vineyard in 2019, and I was with some girlfriends, and we just talked about what we wanted, our vision for the future. And I said, well, I think I might want to start a company. I do this for Furman, maybe I could do it on my own. And they said, well, why don't you? And they said, well, what will we call it? And I said, I don't know. And then encourage communication, encourage talk. And they said, let's buy those domain names.
Right. But now you
and
have.
Then I didn't do anything.
That was 2019. Yes. So it's 2021. So in a year and a half, basically, from the time you took that trip, maybe two, you now have encouraged communication. Yes, you now create workshops. And the first workshop you created was centered around the book that you wrote for teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, so tell us about the book and that workshop. And I will just say, before you get started on that, is that even though this is geared toward teachers, I think it's good for anyone who is in a leadership position within a company too, not just education, right? For anyone who's in a leadership position who will be teaching and training others. Yes. So tell us about that.
I hadn't thought about that, but yes, absolutely. Yeah, I actually wrote this during COVID. It's a very short book, but I selected teachers because well, at the time I was thinking and reflecting on teaching, how I missed the classroom. You know, we were virtual, so I had some contact with students, but still I missed that in-person contact. And so I thought about teacher. I am a teacher. I like teaching. I had come to that realization, you know, after my son asked me, did I really like students? And along the way, it's like, yeah, I really do like them, and I really feel very privileged to have this platform to influence their lives. And so I started jotting down notes and writing about teaching. And also, what happened when COVID hit is that teachers had to make that sharp pivot from in-person classroom to online classroom.
And it was a quick pivot for all of us.
Huge. It was overnight. I mean, they were kind of at the forefront of this brave new world of virtual engagement and virtual learning.
Right.
So beyond my teaching on the college level, I began to think about K-12 teachers and how important they are to our survival, to this entire enterprise, and what we were asking of them. In addition to the book, I've written an op-ed piece.
Right.
And it's called The Nobility Tax. There's a nobility tax on teachers. Teachers are noble. They enter to a profession where they know they're not going to be paid a lot of money, and they work exceptionally hard. Sometimes they're even scapegoated by politicians.
Right.
And yet they enter it anyway with this incredible sense of mission and purpose.
Yeah.
And so, and we don't pay them very well. And we expect,
no matter where they are in the United States.
And we don't expect them to complain about it. And when they complain about it, teachers going on, on strike, clutch them. It's considered awful.
Right.
And we consider them awful. What's wrong with you?
We hear that all the time when they go on strike.
That's noble.
Yeah.
That's taxed for that nobility. So it kind of started with that, and then I thought about just teaching, the act of teaching, and what it entailed. And so the book is about that. It's what it entails. And I came to realize that teaching is teaching wherever you are.
Right.
You have a teacher, you have students, you have a space, you have a in-person space, you have a virtual space. And so teaching, a lot of the essentials of teaching just don't really change.
Right.
And that's what the book's about. It's reminding teachers of the skills and the capacities that they already have, that you don't need, even as you transition to a virtual space that many teachers were not comfortable with. A lot of our Furman professors weren't comfortable with it because we didn't have virtual classes.
Right.
And so mine was just saying, hey, at heart, you're a teacher, you're still a teacher, and here's some things to consider in that space that are outside of technology and outside of even teaching techniques, because teaching is more than teaching techniques.
Absolutely.
It is an energy.
Right.
When you think about your area of expertise, and you have the actors, you have the teacher, you have the students, there is an energy, there is a dynamic.
There's a transference of energy there.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And a context for it. So that's why I wrote the book, and the book talks about things, first about the mission statement. One of my workshops is about creating a mission statement and the importance of that. There is a personal purpose, and the personal purpose is self-inspiration. Sometimes we have to inspire ourselves, and so the mission statement can be a tool of self-inspiration. And then professionally and strategically, I talk about how it's used. It can be used to engage various constituencies around your teaching, constituencies and stakeholders in teaching.
I think, like I said, when we first started the conversation about that particular workshop in that book, I do believe that that's a workshop that leaders in business could do. And they do need, your company has your mission statement, right? And everybody, of course, you want the whole company to buy into that mission statement. But you also, as a leader of that business, or as a leader of that department in that business, need your personal mission statement about what kind of leader you're going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What kind of leader you're going to be, and that becomes your guide.
Right.
It intersects with the institutional mission or the organizational mission, but it's also apart from that. It's who are you,
right?
And what's your, another workshop I do is your contribution, understanding your value and your contribution and being able to articulate that.
So you mentioned that workshop. I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, that workshop would be good for leaders and their employees, or a department in a business, for the leaders to take with the people that they employ that are under them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that workshop.
My focus is capacity building, personal and professional development. One type of professional development is self-fluency. It's understanding yourself as a person and as a worker. That's the foundationally. But being able to engage people about it, talk about it, express it for practical reasons. How is it that you not just the fundamentals of asking for a raise, but knowing your value and talking about your value and contribution to the company. What is it that you bring? How is it that you talk about that in a meaningful and not off-putting way?
Right.
And so it can garner you the things that you want. Being fluent in oneself is good personally, but again, professionally, you have to know how to represent yourself. And so one of my workshops talks about the importance of that and how to do that and how to tell your own story. Excuse me. How you tell your own story in a way that's compelling.
We teach digital storytelling here, and one of the things that I teach in my company is how people can identify their stories right, within their company. And I think that's so important, because if you can't articulate your own story, and it's hard to articulate your own story,
it is.
Which is why people need help with it. So I love the fact that you're doing that, especially for women, I think, and I'm just speaking from my own personal perspective as a woman, that we have a hard time with that especially. And I know men do too, but from a personal perspective, it's always been a difficult thing for a woman to do, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Own it.
Own it. Yeah.
Owning your story.
Yeah.
Knowing your story and owning your story. I just did a workshop yesterday on strategic storytelling, and I told them about owning their story. You are your story, right. Whatever it is.
Right.
There probably is pain. You may come from a dysfunctional family,
right.
But that's you. You take that and you use it. You honor the things in your story, in your past, that are honorable.
Yeah.
You frame it and you create a perspective that's inspiring for you.
Yeah.
And that pushes you forward and pushes you toward the life that you want.
Right.
But yes, being able to own your story, tell your story, is it's extremely important to giving yourself self-understanding, self-awareness, self-confidence, and as a tool of your own professional advancement.
Yeah.
And being able to, because I'm the communication person, that communication and expression is important in being able to share that with others in a way that will uplift and edify them, but also garner you the things that you want.
I think that's so true. And I think for many of our entrepreneurs who are just starting out, right, they're also starting their own businesses, understanding their personal story and how their companies came about are so important too. And that's a takeaway that I want our listeners to get, is that maybe hire you, help you walk them through that process, right? And help them articulate that. And then they can use that as marketing for their company. So I think that's huge. What are some of the other workshops or another workshop that you teach?
Let's see, I did strategic storytelling, the one on missions, and cultivating your leadership voice.
Yeah, let's talk about that one, because I think that's huge for our entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, cultivating your leadership voice. Voice, in the sense that I'm using it, is not just expression. It's who you are. It's your entire frame of reference. It is developing an internal coach, becoming your own coach. And how do you do that? How do you build your own self-confidence? And it starts off with an assessment of your stories, reflecting on your stories, reflecting on your skills, identifying your basis of power. We all have different bases of power. It could be our knowledge, it could be a particular skill that we have, it could be, experience, it could be physicality, but whatever that basis of power is, and you can have several bases of power.
Right.
Understanding what they are and learning how to wield those in professional situation. Wielding means to use it in a professional situation. Use it to advantage yourself and others. So it's not just a leader, of course, is uplifting others. So when I say using it to an advantage, it's not only about oneself, it's also about others as well.
Yeah.
But learning to identify those bases of power so that you can, coming back to one of the original things I said about coaching, becoming that internal coach, changing those voices in your head, training those voices in your head to lead, to cheerlead, to help you navigate whatever the terrain is in your leadership sphere.
Yeah.
And so that's generally what that workshop does.
And you not only teach that, you practice that. And I will say, being an employee of you, when you were chair, she just recently stepped down as chair of the department, that you practice what you preach, basically, because we have had multiple conversations that kind of incorporate all of the things that we're talking about in your workshops, or that you do talk about in your workshops. And so you're putting what you've learned in the past 20 years from teaching into workshops that business people now, not just those of us at Furman, anybody who wants to hire you to consult with them now can get your expertise on these things in a workshop with you.
Wow.
And I think that's a fabulous thing, because it's great that, yes, it's here at Furman and our students get to experience that, and the other people in our department get to experience that, and the women who come through our Women's Leadership Series, they get to experience that in all of the workshops that you do in conjunction with Furman. But I think, Cynthia, that it's a fabulous thing what you're doing, is that you're spreading that out into the community so that business leaders and other teachers in other areas, and anybody who wants to, can gain that knowledge that you share with them, and that you're not just keeping it for us here at Furman.
Thank you. That means so much to me that you think that. I mean, you walk the walk. I mean, another thing I haven't mentioned is authenticity.
Exactly.
And how important that is to leadership. Or just to anyone,
yeah.
right? To your own credibility.
Yeah.
You are how you represent yourself.
Right.
You know, if you say you care, you really do care.
Yeah. And you really do care.
I do.
Yeah.
I truly do, and I'm glad that shows. And also, I wanted to, just as you said, I wanted to move beyond the traditional classroom. As much as I love my students, beyond the traditional classroom, I wanted to engage other folks in the community.
Right.
Because I tell you, I get as much as I give. I learn so much. Once you see folks for their possibility,
yes,
man, everyone is brilliant.
Yeah.
You see it all around you.
It's true. Everyone is brilliant in their own right.
It truly is. I told my class this summer, I met with them briefly, I talked to them briefly and said, I think you're brilliant. My estimation of you is not predicated on how you do in this class.
Right.
You may fail this class. I hope you don't.
Right.
You may fail this class. You may really flub up. I will still think you're brilliant. I will still think well of you. Yeah. There's standards in the class. I have to apply the standards equally and fairly.
Right.
But how my belief in you is whole and it is complete. Because I know what humans can do.
Right.
I really do. And so that's been the most life-changing thing for me, because you're now curious about people.
Yeah.
You view them with wonder.
Yes.
Rather than just, taking people for granted. You want to know, and you care, and you believe.
And I think those are all the good things that good leaders have.
Yeah.
Those characteristics that you just mentioned about recognizing the strength in your people. Right. You believe in them. Right. Otherwise, you have no business hiring them, quite honestly.
Well, you answered the question. You're enough.
Right, exactly.
You are.
Yeah.
You're enough.
Yeah.
And that's powerful for people.
Yeah.
And it comes back to you, because once you give them that confidence, they go out and do great things. They want to do it.
Right.
They want to do it. It
breeds loyalty.
It does breed loyalty. And I saw that very clearly when I was chair. Because, as I mentioned, some of those folks outranked me. They'd been there a long time.
Right.
And they didn't have to do what I said do.
Right.
They didn't have to come to this special event. And I knew that I needed to build my leadership capital. I think they liked me well enough, but like me, they probably were wondering, what kind of chair is she going to be? What kind of leader is she going to be? So I knew that that I needed to build that capital, and I had to be very intentional about doing it. It didn't just magically come with empathy and encouragement. They were certainly part of it. They were a dynamic that turbocharged what I do, but I had to be very strategic about how I built that capital. How I, built, and capital meaning their respect, their wanting me to succeed, their belief in, the vision that I introduced or the vision that we co-created for the department, and then enacting that vision. I couldn't make them do that.
Right.
So that took some thinking, some intention, empathy, encouragement, and a belief in them were major parts of that. Because that's the other piece of that. I really did believe in them. It wasn't just that I believed in the students.
Right.
I truly liked and believed my colleagues. And so I was, hopefully that was evident to them, and that became part of why we were able to accomplish, some of the things that we accomplished under my leadership.
Which we did a lot. We accomplished a lot.
Did a lot.
I want to switch gears just a little bit now before we start to wrap this up. So I want to talk about some of the best advice that you ever received, if you can think back, other than what Imani said, because I think that's out of the mouth of babes, right? But the best, right. Yeah. Some of the best advice. It's true. You don't want to have useless regrets, right? So that was the catalyst.
And she meant you're a hand wringer. You second guess. Mom, she didn't say it, but it's like you don't seem to have peace.
Yeah.
And so. She didn't say that, but I knew that's what she meant, because they saw me. And that's the thing about authenticity. They saw me at home.
Right.
They saw me at home.
Yeah.
And I wanted to change how they saw me. That's how my children view me. Super important.
Yeah.
Super important to me, because that's, that there has to be some congruity between who I am inside and who I am outside, even as we have public and private faces, but there can't be that major disconnect.
Right.
Dr. King and confident here, and this kind of a hand wringer at home.
Right.
That needed to change.
So no, that's great. That's part of it. With Imani's advice aside, what was probably the best piece of advice that sticks out in your mind that has taken you and prompted you to create your company and be where you are today?
Ooh, let's see. I guess it would be, there's a few pieces of advice.
Yeah.
Everything is always all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end.
That's true. Oh my gosh, say that again for the people in the back.
Everything is always all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. So keep pulling through, keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
And it will be all right. It will be all right. And the other is, and I say this in almost every workshop, folks are folks. So let folks be folks, and don't get mad at folks when they act like the folks they are. And there's a whole lot of wisdom packed in that. I got to give a shout out to my late mother-in-law, Frankie B. King, for that. And I can just see me being at her kitchen table and her saying that, folks are just acting like folks. So we all exist in a flawed state of humanity, all of us.
Right.
I got issues, you got issues, all of God's children got issues. Extend grace to the grace that you will surely need to others. And, there are folks who are just going to be themselves. And even when they say things to you or do things to you and mean it to hurt you or to offend you, it's really them being you. And so you've got to protect your heart and your head. You can't let them get in your head. You can't let them get into your heart. You can't give them that space in your life, because it sucks up energy. And so you have to mentally get some distance from that. So even if you're trying to come at me, that's really more about you. Doesn't mean that I can't learn from you. As a matter of fact, when I give you that distance, I can learn from you.
Right.
Because I'm not in battle with you. I am not in a competition with you. I'm not doing battle with you.
Say that one more time, because I think so many of us believe that we are in battle with other people when in fact we are not.
No, you're really not. We're all in battle with ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly.
We are all in battle with ourselves, and when other people come at you, it's it's a reflection of kind of them. You want to ask them, well, what happened to you? As a matter of fact, I think Oprah has a show or a podcast or something, or book, something. What happened to you? Yeah. And it's not always bad, because the stuff happened to me. So it's not an indictment.
No, not
it is that curiosity that I mentioned. It's really what happened to you. But in any way, but just trying to give yourself that mental and emotional distance so that you can, dare I say, appreciate them.
Right.
I can appreciate and I can learn from you. That was the biggest thing that I learned, and the biggest wisdom that I put in operation, or that informed my choices and my reactions as a leader.
And I can see how that played out in your leadership. As someone who's been under your leadership, I completely see how that's played out. I believe that we all learn from failure or setbacks, right? Talk a little bit about one of the setbacks or one of the failures that you had in starting your company, something that you wish that someone had told you, some piece of advice that you want to impart to the entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast.
That you have to learn the art of selling. Mm-hmm. You have to learn the art of selling. That's just anathema to professors. Right. We don't sell.
Right.
We just don't do it. Now, ironically, when I was in high school, I was assistant manager of a men's clothing store. Mm-hmm. And
so you were selling.
I was selling. I was really good at it, which is why I was manager at such a young age. Right. And I enjoyed it.
But it's easier to sell things than to sell yourself.
Oh my gosh.
And your strengths and your characteristics and your product that you have.
That's really painful. And and not do it in a vulgar way.
Right.
Not do it in a really vulgar way. That's hard for me.
Yeah.
So I think I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
I just completed a course with the Small Business Development Center. Shout out to them. It was a great course. Mm-hmm. Ed Gregorich was the instructor, and it was the nuts and bolts and the fundamentals of starting a business, and it was really good. And we talked about selling and having to sell, and the reluctance to do it is beyond the discomfort is that you face rejection.
Right.
Oh,
right.
And who wants to be rejected?
Why put yourself out there through that? Right.
My
That's
God.
kind of the thought process.
So you know what? The literature I'm reading now is reframing that rejection. Mm-hmm. It's like, embracing the no.
Yes.
Right? Because when you get those no's, it means that you did something. And for me, I was, I would read and think and plan, but not do. It was just like, and get up to the bat, and then, and then not do.
Right.
But what I'm realizing now is that when I go out there and when I do, and when I get that no, or when that callback doesn't happen, mm-hmm. It doesn't matter, because it means that I've done something.
Right.
It's evidence that I have pushed through that fear, that I have pushed through that dread. And that is, that's growth and development.
Absolutely.
I'm building my own capacity as much as, I seek to build the capacity of others.
And I would add that every no, every rejection leads you to the yes that you're going to get.
Yes. I think, absolutely. Yeah. You learn from it, and you learn to push through it, and it's okay. You sort of brush it off and say, it's okay.
Yeah, and this is what I learned from this.
Yes, and you don't have the script about the person there saying, just something negative in your head about the person, why they're not calling you back, why they're telling you no. You let that go, and you reframe them as, oh, okay, you're helping me.
Exactly.
You really are helping me to grow.
Yeah. Cynthia, I love this conversation so much, and I know we could keep talking for hours, so I'm going to have you back on the podcast at some point. But thank you so much.
I'll have better news.
Oh, you have great news, great stuff, great information.
The company was grown.
You had to hire a couple of consultants. We'll see. But
indeed.
Before I let you go, where can people find you if they want to hire you, and where can they find your book?
The book is on Amazon, and you can just reach out to me at encouragecommunication@gmail.com.
Okay, perfect.
Encouragecommunication@gmail.com.
Okay. You are so inspirational, and I've told you this many times, but I'm going to say it again for all of our people. And we are so lucky to have you not only in the Comm Studies department. And I will say personally that I've had many, in the news, we move around, right? You are the best leader and the best boss and I'm not just, this is very authentic, that I have ever had. And I think it comes from that that mindset that you have that started your company, encourage communication.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm about to cry when I say that because it's so true. And now all of your clients get to get that too. And that's exciting. That's exciting stuff because we are, Anthony talks about this all the time. We are building an ecosystem of entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think in order to have that innovative thought process, in order to have that innovation mindset, you have to get out of your own way. And that's what you teach people to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Listeners, we hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and of course that you learned something new that you can take home with you. This podcast is produced in partnership with Furman's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. It is produced by LeNae Jones and Emma Kerr, and it is an example of the Furman Advantage. Join us for the next episode of our special series, Pathfinders in Purple, when we talk with music professor Omar Carminati, better known as Dr. C to his students, and we're going to talk to him about his innovation and how he's taken Furman Percussion Ensemble to the national stage. Remember, the Class C podcast is brought to you through that partnership between Furman Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. To hear future conversations, be sure to subscribe to the Class C podcast wherever you listen. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, everybody, dream big.